What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the MMA Archive. I'm so happy to be joined again by my guy Arwin. Please tell them where they could find your stuff at.
You can follow me on Twitter at 808 MMA Insight, and you can follow us on SoundCloud at For the Free.
Nice. For the free. I got to check that out too. So once again, thank you so much for coming on. This is the first time that you're on the old school MMA archive. So hyped to talk some Pride One with you. Just hilarious that it worked out this way that of course we're covering Pride One in Pride Month. So it's all aligning. It's all aligning here. Dude, I've been waiting for this for a long time. Like legit, I was talking to a bunch of different people this week. I'm like, it's not just the UFC archive no more. Like we got that. It's the MMA archive now because we finally got another promotion in the fold. So excited to jump right into this one. So Pride 1 took place on October 11th, 1997 at the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. Of course, there was, and this is a record so far, based on all the UFC events I've covered, 50,000 people in attendance here at the Tokyo Dome. It was electric, so it makes sense. The TV announcers were Stephen Quadros as well as Bas Rutten, which I thought they're a great duo. Like I'm excited to watch more Pride events because I know Bas Rutten was their commentator for a long time too. Quadros still does stuff with Risen now in the present day. So interested to see with that whole, I don't know if you heard about this, but the whole issue with the Bima TV because of Sakaki Bara. So I don't know if you know this as well, but just to make a long story short, one of the main reasons why Pride was eventually sold the way it was so abruptly was because there was rumors of ties between.
Oh, the Yakuza, right?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Oh,
So that same thing is happening now as well. So
yeah.
apparently he still has ties with the Yakuza, and Abimo is supposed to have an international broadcast for the Tenshin Nasukawa versus Takeru kickboxing match. But
That's
they
right.
they waived their entire international rights, so now it's only going to be played in Japan locally. So I need to figure out my VPN. I need to watch that fight. But anyway, I'm interested to see how Risen works moving forward, considering that obviously now there's having issues because of these ties to the Yakuza. Fucking nuts. And I'm not gonna lie, when I was watching this event, there was a couple times where I'm like, this feels a little questionable. Like, is this some fixed shit? Like, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the ones that I felt that way about. But let's jump right into this, man. The first bout of the night was between this is tough. This is tough to say right here. Murakami Kazunari, hope I said that correctly, versus John Dixon. Um, Let me just read off the stats for this one. Kazunari came in at 6'1", 209 pounds. John Dixon came in at 6', 275. So we got some big boys here. This was fun while it lasted. Like there was a lot of interesting moments where they ended up really locked up in clinch positions. Dixon was trying to work for double unders a lot, but from there, wasn't really able to work for the takedown. And then he just lands this huge judo throw, Kazunari that is. And from there, one of the slickest transitions I could remember in the old school MMA fight so far, where he got that top position and had the arm already, and then just started hammering them just to distract them a little bit to sit out for that arm bar. I thought that this finish was awesome and a great way to start off the card, man. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, man. I feel like as MMA fans now, we've been spoiled with like really like high quality fights. So it's really fun to watch an old fight and saying like, wow, like this sport has grown so much. And this is like basically like what like the beginning of the card too. And then you see like the quality of matchups. And it was just really, dude, man, I was like, John Dixon, I was like, this is somebody's like soccer coach, you know? And then and then Murakami, when he threw him, I was like, okay, that was really cool. And then got him with the armbar and everything. And I was like, yeah, like you can tell this is from 97. So I was like, okay, like let's see where the night goes from here.
Yeah, it was some true old school shit. You got the thick dudes looking like they're a little lost out there. It was great. Staple of old school MMA, and I agree. I feel like there's I'm excited to talk about this too. I feel like there's levels as far as what makes a fight a good fight. Like there's different criteria like that.
Mhm.
There's some fights that are good, but for different reasons than others are. So I'm excited to get into that too about some of the later fights. So that's an awesome point. But this second fight, dude, this second fight was crazy. Gary Goodrich versus Oleg Taktarov, two UFC veterans. Obviously, Oleg Taktarov ended up winning the tournament. I think it was UFC 6.
Mhm.
So really a decorated fight. I was surprised that this was so low on the card, especially with the way it delivered, dude. And this is another good point of sort of what makes a fight good. There was a lot of times in this fight where it was a lull in action. They weren't really doing much. They
Mhm.
were just looking at each other and sort of anticipating that moment of engagement.
Mhm.
And man, when Gary Goodrich got going, it was destructive. Honestly, I feel like after that first knockdown, there was a case to stop it. And
Mhm.
dude, the way it ended was just freaking brutal. I mean, a
Slept
faceplant
them.
KO, literally that gets
Mhm.
shown often now. Still, just the way he fell and the way the follow up shots didn't affect him like at all. Like usually there's a reaction to those. Like that's how you know someone is entirely out already. Just a bad knockout in every way possible. And it's such a bittersweet thing watching a lot of Gary Goodrich's fights, honestly, because obviously he's had many highlight reel knockouts just like this too. But obviously
Mhm.
he's been very vocal about dealing with a lot of the effects of CTE and how it's affected him in his later life. So it's just
Yeah.
so bizarre to see, like, for lack of a better word, the dude was a wild man, and the dude definitely shelled out his fair share of brain trauma himself. So
Mhm.
just a wild fight, and honestly, I didn't expect it to go this way at all. Like I thought Taktarov would be able to slow things down, uh, get him on top at some point, and then work his offense there. But this was bad. This was bad.
Yeah, I was. I love Uncle Gary. Yeah, on Twitter I put one day I will hope my traps look like Gary Goodridge's back in Pride One because he just looked like a monster back then. And then honestly, I think that out of all the fights, this is probably my favorite one. But then
Mhm.
because I totally ignored like the lull in action because because it seemed like they were very like yeah very timid and very like trying to feel each other out. But it was like a long fight, so like Oleg was trying to get off his takedowns and it wasn't like that reactionary. Like it was kind of from far out. And then I think Gary Goodridge was like the only one who really threw a jab this entire fight card. like
Yeah.
and leg kicks. And I was like, oh my God, like set something up, like do more. And then like, but I think the knockout itself was just so brutal. I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy.
Dude, and then this something I got to mention too, because I thought it was no, literally the first exchange of this fight. Gary Goodrich threw a leg kick naked, no setup whatsoever, and got dropped with the left hook. So I was freaking out
Mm-hmm.
as soon as the fight started. I'm like, yo, this guy is not known for his power like that. And he's
mm-hmm.
just dropping him with the left hook early, and he landed some nice shots too early on in the fight. Like I felt like he definitely had been working on his boxing. That's something they said on the commentary as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that came across like early on. He had some success on the feet, but this was a
Mm-hmm.
theme for this night too of people that are more known for being grapplers, but sort of because they're working on their striking now, they get used to doing that more so. So now that
Mm-hmm.
that's like their primary form of attack. Reminded me of sort of the K1 Maya phase when Damian Maya was out here trying to box up
Oh.
everyone. Uh,
Oh.
it felt like that because I felt like Ola early on, like Oleg was having success on the feet, but then it just got real timid out of nowhere. And then once those
Mm-hmm.
exchanges started happening, like you said, it was so explosive and so wild in those moments that you just completely
Mm-hmm.
forgot of the other moments where we was waiting for it to happen, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can see like from here you're seeing everyone's trying to figure out how to mix the martial arts now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it was like you can tell where they're trying to go, like, okay, boxing, okay, kickboxing. All right, back to wrestling, back to boxing again. And I'm like, do it together. Like, and like I'm like, wait, I gotta chill out because this is '97. This is like still early on that this is going on. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. It's always bugged out too when you see like a flash of brilliance, like you're like, oh shit, like that looks like something that happens today. Like I always try to make notes of those things because it's
Right.
it's few and far between. Like I feel like you said, we're spoiled now. What is considered a
Mm-hmm.
boring fight? Like I saw so many people on Twitter yesterday talking about how Brendan Allen versus Malcolm was a boring fight. I'm like, well, are do you just say you don't like grappling because that's as fun as it gets, right? Like
Yeah,
for a guy like
exactly.
me. So yeah, hilarious.
Exactly. Transitions, scrambles. Yeah. Back then it's like you get taken down, they stay there. you
Exactly.
know?
There's not going to be parity where they're just going to be relaxing or trying to survive.
No, they settled. I was like, yeah, I'll give up this round. Fuck it.
You got it. And there's a lot of that
uh,
coming up, dude. This next fight, let's just get right into it because it goes from like these highs that I honestly was expecting coming in watching Pride because I've seen the highlight reels. There's a bunch of crazy shit that happens in this promotion that I'm excited to witness in this way. But dude,
mhm,
starting the card the way these two did to run into this fight right here. So let me give some insight of how I sort of prep for these because I know it's a lot to watch these fights, but I have up the Tapology page, but I don't scroll up through the matchups until I watch it during the event. So that way I'm not
right.
really being spoiled on who's fighting until I'm at that point. As well as like the matchup and because on Tapology, obviously you see who won. So I try to avoid that.
Mhm,
So as soon as I saw Henzo Gracie, I'm like, let's go. Like this is gonna be hype. I know Henzo. Like I'm excited to watch this. So the tail of the tape on this one was Akira Shoji, standing
mhm,
at 5'8", 194, coming up against Henzo Gracie, 5'10", 185. So this fight starts and I'm pumped. Like I'm hype. I'm like, these last two fights have been bangers. This one's gonna be great. Dude, this fight was garbage, like absolute garbage. And what made it so bad for me is like once I'm not a guy that hates grappling. I enjoy watching it. But there was just a lot of points where obviously timidity on the feet, getting to a
mhm,
point where you can be on the ground. But then once they were on the ground, obviously Henzo was having a lot of control time, but not really doing much with it. Like you would think he would try more
mhm,
so to advance. And obviously there's times where he did. But it felt like a very early MMA theme of like, I'm gonna get top position,
mhm,
and then I kind of get stuck here. Like, what are we gonna do now? And
mhm,
that happened a bunch in this one. And something that I noticed about this card in general was like, it's a little weird that they don't like explain the rounds beforehand. Like, for example, this fight had 3 10-minute rounds. So it was a
mhm.
long fight, like a very, very long fight. And later on, there was a fight that was 1 30-minute round. Like what is the difference? Like how am I supposed to know this? So I guess that's just the fun of watching Pride. I wonder if on the
Right, right,
actual
right.
broadcast, like they mentioned that, but on the sort of cut down, trimmed down version I saw on Fight Pass,
Mhm,
they didn't mention anything in between fights. You just had to figure it out based on how the match was going. Like there was even a kickboxing match that I'm excited to talk about too that came up later. But you could tell how bad this fight is because the conversation of this fight went somewhere else. I'm trying to avoid talking about this one. Please, I'm excited to hear how you felt watching this 30-minute slog fest.
Yeah, it definitely was a mud match for me. Like it was so funny because I actually had to cook dinner for me and my girl. So I was like, babe, can you watch this shit? Because I just cannot like right now. Like I can't. I watched the first two round, like the first, yeah, I think the first round, and then I was like, I can't do this shit because unlike you, I did the opposite where I accidentally saw all the results and I was like, fuck. Like I didn't want to do that because I wanted to watch it like normally, but I was like, okay, whatever. So it's a draw. I was like, it can't be that bad, right? So then watching, I was like, oh hell no. Okay, I'm gonna go cook dinner, babe. Go watch this shit. And then she's watching. It's like, I think the Japanese guy won. And then I was like, wait, honey, you got to remember that the scoring system's different. Like it's not the same like UFC. And she's like, what? So what is it? It's like it's based on like who's more aggressive and like who's doing more. And it's like, well, I think the Japanese guy's doing more. She was like trying to like questioning herself after that. Because like I remember watching, I was like, oh hell no! Like I can see why this ended in draw. This is just,
Hell yeah.
I think they had like one good moment, and then they just stopped, and I was like, what? They keep
Yep.
going.
And I agree with your girl. Actually, I feel like that
Oh,
one good moment was for I'm sorry, I feel terrible that I'm not saying his name, so I'm pulling it up.
Shoji.
It was for Shoji, exactly. And in that stretch, I feel like it made up for all the other inactivity prior.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was today's
Still a draw.
MMA, that's such a good point. Based on
Right.
how damage is weighed so heavily, I feel like that
Mm.
it could have been actually scored for Shoji, but because of the rules, it just got ruled a draw.
Yeah, dude. It was just, that was hard. And this is like the first fight. And I was like, okay, I can't do like this again. But yeah, we'll continue
There can't be another one of these, right? Yeah.
on.
I'm used to it already. There's been a
Oh.
couple that have been hell to sit through where I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you gotta hit the plus 5 second. And in the next one that we're gonna talk about, there's literally stretches where I hit it a couple times and there
Uh-huh.
still was nothing that happened in between. So that is rough. So
You're
excited to
smart though. Oh,
excited to
dude.
roast that.
Oh,
Next
man.
up, the fourth bout of the night. This one was actually fun. Not gonna lie. I was bugging out during this one. We got Nathan Jones standing at 6'9", 345 pounds. And
Mm-hmm.
let me say this asterisk right here. This guy looks shredded. Like it's not like he was a thick guy. Don't get me wrong, but when you
Mm-hmm.
hear the weight that high, you would think they're a little more on the chubby side, like your boy over here. No, like he was compared to his opponent. He looked pretty sturdy there. Obviously, he was coming up against,
Uh-huh.
excuse me, Mitsuharu Kiteo, standing at 6'7", 390. Two freaking giants, dude. And early
Mm-hmm.
on in this, Nathan ended up throwing a spinning heel kick. They called it a crescent kick. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if I'm just prisoner in the moment with the Lyoto Machida Randy Couture fight, where that's my idea of what a crescent kick is. I've never heard a spinning kick like that called a crescent kick, so I was like bugging out on
Thought it goes
on
more
that.
like
But
that way. Yeah. Like
yeah,
front and then that way.
got you. So yeah, I was like a little confused about that. But when that happened, I was like, oh, we throwing spinning shit now. Like we're on that level. But
Uh-huh.
for the rest of the fight, it was a little more disappointing. He ended up trying to wrap up a guillotine on Kateo, and from there he threw a knee, which is something that I've seen other people like have this same thing happen to before. One of them actually being the guy that's on your screen, Dustin Poirier,
Mm-hmm.
where you have a guillotine locked up, and then you're like, you know what, I could land a knee here because they're postured up trying to avoid the guillotine. Sounds like a good
Mm-hmm.
idea until you're on one foot and they're driving
Mm-hmm.
right through your legs, and that's exactly what happened. Um, Kateo ended up getting on top and moving straight into side control and wrapping up what I would say the most methodical key lock I've seen. Because there's been a couple key locks in the UFC up to this point,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no like, okay, now I'm at the point that I'm moving quickly on this. Nah, he was slowly wrenching it until he had just enough torque to secure the tap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. That was crazy. I mean, that's how you're supposed to do it, you know. You're just being heavyweight guys, like, I'm gonna make sure I secure it first.
Hmm.
But what's funny too is so Nathan Jones he was a power lifter and he's an actor. So if you watch Never Back Down 3 with I think Michael Jai White,
Hmm.
I think he's the main guy. He's the main guy at the end. So
That's
he's done a
crazy.
lot of MMA stuff after like, but his MMA career as a whole wasn't like as spectacular as his movie career. So
Yeah.
yeah, dude, like it's just funny. Like just seeing all this stuff is like you see the difference, and
Hmm.
it's like, especially with heavyweight MMA, it's like it's still, there's still a process where you're watching it. I'm like, okay, go for a body shot because he's covering high, and they just don't do it. I'm just saying, all right, well, this makes sense that this is still happening.
For sure, because I
uh,
agree. There's times where I get frustrated like that watching fights today, and then and
uh,
then I look back and I'm like, if only they knew how lucky they were. Because there's a lot of moments where it's just like, questionable decisions. But thank you for that
Hmm.
context. I had no idea. I wonder
Yeah.
if Nathan Jones was famous at that time as well, because that was the case with the main event too. And obviously we'll get to that a little bit later, but just the theme
Hmm.
of getting people in that are famous for being in those action type movies or pro wrestling and putting them to the goddamn test in the deep end.
Hmm.
So that's interesting. But honestly, when this one started at Space and everything like that, I was like, Nathan Jones probably should have this, right? Like in theory. So it was fun to see the way it played out.
Crazy.
Heck yeah. So next up, we had K1 rules, kickboxing. They completely switched it. Didn't really make a mention of it until the fight is starting. They both had on MMA gloves though, so I thought that was interesting. Ralph
Hmm.
White standing at 6'3", 225 pounds versus Branko Sikatic standing at 6'2", 216. Um, this barely lasted a couple minutes, but this was awesome. Like that, inject this into my veins. I had fun during this entire fight.
Hmm.
Off the glove touch, Branko just the absolute asshole move. Throws a spinning back kick as soon as they get off of doing that glove touch, and then everyone reacted like, "Oh, like what the fuck?" Like, damn, dude, like that's and it's rare that you get a reaction like that in Japan. So I
Right.
found that hilarious because I agree, just a scummy thing to do. And then right shortly after that, lands a big overhand right that drops Ralph, and as he's on the ground, lands a brutal kick to the head that we're used to seeing in Pride. So I was
Oh,
confused on this. But because it was just stand-up rules and not MMA, that kick is illegal. And if that would have happened in one of the MMA
right.
fights, it would have been
Right.
completely legal. Yeah, that moment kind of confused me there. And he ended up falling sort of out of the ring. And I noticed whenever that happened in this event, they'll just restart it on the feet. So that's probably what would have happened. But from the kick, he ended up getting a huge hematoma on his forehead that blew up real quick too.
Hmm.
Like and just kept getting bigger, and they were analyzing it, and obviously because that damage came off of this illegal move, they ended up DQing Sikatic. Just a weird fight. Kind of feels cosmic karma that you get DQ'd after after what you did times two. So I don't feel bad for him, but it was fun,
Oh,
not gonna lie.
that was crazy. Yeah,
Mhm.
he used the glove touch as a frame, but then fucking asshole. So yeah, so when I saw it too, I was like, oh yeah, he's disqualified, like for sure. And then so this made me appreciate Quadros and Rutin as commentators because I think there was like a good like 5 to 10 minutes of them just talking. And it just seemed like a podcast where they were just like shooting the shit, like super, like it gets it like it becomes a trend over the night too, because then they start getting more and more comfortable, and they start talking more and more shit,
They're not even
and
talking
it
about the fight anymore.
yeah,
They're just
exactly.
talking shit. Yeah.
They start the professionalism goes out the window. They're like, oh no, this is fucking terrible. Like
Yeah.
it's just so funny. Yeah, we'll get to it, but that shit was so funny.
Yeah, I
Oh
love
man.
Quadros, man. He's a meme. Even now, he mostly does the shows with why did I just blank on his name? Frank Trigg. So obviously he's
Right,
known
right,
for
right.
doing refereeing now, but he's over there in Risen. Love me some Quadros. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
this next one felt like the marquee fight, right? Name wise, you would think Kimo Leopoldo standing at 6'3", 235. And this is notable. I'm going to get back to that in a second. Versus Dan Severn, 6'2", 250. So in this era, obviously, we didn't have those stronghold contracts, I'm guessing, because these guys were just like, hey, I'll see you guys later, I guess. And they even made note in the UFC broadcast, like he went to Japan and he's going to be coming back. So that I found that pretty cool. If only today's MMA had stuff like that more often. But random side note, shout out to Bellator and BKFC working together. I don't know if you saw that fight
Yeah, it was
announcement they're
weird.
doing. Mike Perry versus
Venom Page, yeah.
MVP in
Yeah.
bare knuckle. So I don't know. You kind of got to favor Perry, right, in that matchup.
Yeah, he was gonna make it dirty, honestly. Like, it
Yep.
has to be that way.
Hmm. Hell yeah.
Damn.
At space though, MVP is always dangerous. So I'm excited to see how that works out.
Hmm.
But just an example of how this makes for fun fights that honestly props up both organizations. Because look, we're talking about them for the most part. I don't really talk
Yeah.
too much about BKFC or Bellator in general, so that's important, and it does a lot for the sport. God damn it! But anyway, these guys both coming over from the UFC to Pride. And the most crazy thing about it to me was Chemo is clearly back on the sauce. So let's get this straight. In the last fight that he had in the UFC, he dropped down like he looked like he could make 205, dude. Like he dropped
Right.
down to like 220 lean. Like he looked really small compared to before. So I'm like, oh, I guess he's working on his cardio a lot. And obviously it ended up playing out. He ended up winning that fight, and it was more of a long fight, and it worked out in his favor. So honestly, I kind of feel like that's the optimized version of Chemo. Like he actually looks like a MMA fighter versus the memes that come when he's actually just jacked off of all the supplements. You can tell. And clearly, I mean, just bulking up in a matter of, I looked it back, I think it's like a year and 4 months bulking up to that level after losing that weight. Crazy. But I don't know. I thought Severn was looking a little better than he was in the UFC too. So I'm like, damn, is it like mandatory? Is it like you signed a contract and you get a little shot in the arm or something? I don't know how it works out, but both of these guys looked in better shape than their last fights, and that got me excited. I'm like, this is gonna be a fun fight, right? Please tell the people what ensued after that assumption.
Oh, but well, if you look at the contrast of styles, so I think Chemo is known for like the better, like standing up and just being a big guy, right? And then Severn's known to be a wrestler and all that. But again, you got to remember this is '97, so like the mixing of the martial arts is still in process. And like it's so funny because we back then the knowledge of just like what supplements do to your body and like how the meta of like just like cutting weight and like gaining weight, what happens to it. The whole fight, I'm just saying, I just see two old men fighting each other, two old, tired, buff men trying to strike each other, not throwing a jab, like barely throwing like naked low kicks all night, shots from like miles away. There's like a couple good moments, but then at the same time, like you when you listen to the commentary, you're like, what the hell am I watching too? Like, because then at that point they're getting tired of it, and that's their job to like be interested in it. They're like I don't know what they're doing. Like, it's like, oh, I can't even figure. I forgot his name already. No, Severn. He's been saying he's improving on his striking, so he wants to like show off his striking. I'm like, he doesn't have to. Like, he doesn't have to do it. Like, it's okay. I believe him. Like, it just was so bad. Like a lot of the fight, and it's funny too because I think he was busting up Chemo's face. You know,
Both of them busted each other up, funny enough.
yeah, and it was just like the fact it was ruled like a draw because it was just
So bad.
like what is going on, like what are we doing? So yeah, I don't know, it was just so weird. Like I did like that they did more draws back then because I guess they're just trying to figure it out, like well, what are we gonna do with this and that. That's why when you were talking about the times and like how no one really knew what the times were, I think I watched like one of the later Pride events, like with like Rampage and all them, like it seemed a little bit more organized,
For sure.
which I enjoy a lot. So the progression of MMA, like these old fights are important. Like watching them, like as painful as they are, they're good film study because you see like you don't want to do this sometimes. Like there's times where this is all the good things that you can get from this, and then there's this stuff that you don't want to do now because it's not going to work now. You can't throw a naked low kick. You can't just throw hooks. Like you can't just try to initiate a clinch and just hold. Like you have to do more. And it reminded me of like Glover and Yuri, like last night. Like they weren't giving up position. They were trying to do more each time. And that was a heavyweight. Oh no, sorry, light heavyweight fight too. So it's like seeing them do all these things and being like a lower weight class, but still, yeah, like you got to have that mindset. Like, oh, I can't just settle here. I have to do more. Like, Yuri made that adjustment with the body shots too. And then when you go all the way back to '97, you watch these fights, you're like, yeah, there's body shots right there. Like even like a normal guy could see that. and then they don't go for it. They just try to like hit the face. They shoot in, try to initiate clinch, and then don't do nothing with the clinch. Like, and it was just a lot. And then the fact that it went to a draw made me even more upset. So it's just like I just watched a 30-minute match with two old men. Just that's it. They both won.
Dude,
you
I
know?
gotta ask you, like, who do you feel under today's modern context, if you had to score that fight and give a winner, like, who do you think won? Like going into that moment,
Honestly, dude, like I
they
feel like
both lost.
karma.
They both
Uh,
lost. That's
like
why it's a draw.
no, I'll pick a winner. I'll pick a winner because in my head, I'm just like part of it's repressing it because it was so like shitty, and
So
the
long.
commentary, yeah, it was so long. The commentary made it fun though because they were just talking shit. But I think Severn won just like on the takedowns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he was doing better there, and then I feel like he just should have kept going because he was attacking more, and then like he was getting really tired.
Mhm.
But then I guess it just doesn't last when you're like on the sauce, right? So
Exactly. Exactly. And the fact that they made this fight one round for 30 minutes straight. There was not a break. There was not no time to catch your breath. And I feel like that played into the way the fight played out too, because
yeah.
there's no shot in the arm from having that minute of recovery. It's just straight slog. And there was some moments that I squinted really hard to appreciate. For example, I've watched a lot of Dan Severn fights, and this is the moment as well. Like this fight, his last fight, where it feels like we're seeing him get old. And he came into the sport older. So I agree with you on that. That was something that I noticed off the top too, because when you watch the first couple of events and you see the reason why Dan Severn has the name he does today, like you respect his
Mm-hmm.
game. Like it's not like he's a bum. Like it's not like that is what he always offered. But it's at that point where now you sort of expect that. And he's been working, which I love. He worked off of sort of the wrestling stance, because obviously you would know better than I, but you have a dominant side based on where you prefer to shoot from, and that's usually
Right.
how what foot you put forward depends on
Mm-hmm.
how readily that takedown is there for you. And I would assume he wrestled the way he sort of right foot forward, because he adapted, and he was one of the very few guys who is using that southpaw stance.
Right.
So you see that with a lot of early wrestlers as well. Mark Coleman comes to mind too. That
Mm-hmm.
it just looks different, because at this time not everyone is doing that. That's not common to see those sort of opposite stance matchups. So there was a lot of times where Severn was landing jabs, but the problem was it was only jabs. Like there was no follow up whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. You got to
So,
follow up.
so even when he would tag him a couple times, there was a cumulative damage, but it wasn't like he was stunning him. Or and I actually got a little bit of a hot take here. I felt like coming away that Chemo won in today's scoring criteria, because I felt like he landed the bigger shots, had the bigger moments, and those
Mm-hmm.
takedowns weren't really secured for a long period of time. They ended up getting ringed out anyway, so they just restarted it back up on the feet.
Yeah.
The one time he actually did get a takedown, and then besides that, he was getting stuffed the whole night. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was a weird fight. Like I expected a lot more out of this because of their previous engagements in the UFC. So it just felt like a decline for both of them. You get back on the sauce, it gets hard to get. You're not used to those movements. Your body isn't moving the way it
Mm-hmm.
was a couple months ago, but
Yeah, man.
it was tough.
Yeah, dude. A lot of lactic acid buildup. You see it.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, man, like I was telling my girl when we were watching it too, like, yeah, so you see this old guy right here? Like he's had more than like I think like 80 or like 100 MMA fights. Like he was like Sayanshai for MMA, just fighting younger dudes for a while, and then when he finally retired, like him and Jeremy Horn, shout out to him. Like and seeing this fight, I might have to watch it again just because like I need to work on like my scoring because I actually do want to like try to apply to be an MMA judge. So like I
Nice.
should try to watch it again. So, but yeah, man, it's just it's nice. Like people, we gotta appreciate those like old fights, and then you see like what you get now because you see people bitch like MMA Twitter is so fickle, right? Like like you see them bitch about the fights now, but I'm like, dude, like trust me, like we're spoiled compared to like all the shit we used to watch. Like even like like UFC like 30 days, like all those days, like they were getting up there, but compared to now, like the matchups are more high quality. Like even like the prelims, like those guys,
Exactly.
you see, it's very rare you see guys who like have mud matches like that, you know. So
Or complete squash matches where it's like that guy
yeah.
didn't belong in there. Like that's how it felt
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of these early fights. Like it was either you had a great fight
Mm-hmm.
because it was competitive, or someone came in there to get smoked. Like that's what it felt
Right.
like.
That's exactly what
Uh
it is.
yeah, for sure. And honestly, man, I wanted like it bad fights get even worse when you have actual like hopes for them. Like I was hoping that this fight was actually going to be good. Like based on their previous
Mm-hmm.
fights, I'm hyped. And it just
Exactly.
the hugest letdown left the worst taste in my mouth. So we can move on from this one. But just imagine this: you guys complain all the time now. Imagine having to sit through a 30-minute fight, like
Mm-hmm.
straight, and this is now like between this and the Ken Shamrock fight, like dude, like you're on the all-time snoozer list now. Like those fights, like
Mm-hmm.
even people were complaining recently about Rose versus Carla 2. Dude, watch that fight and then watch this fight. I would say Rose and Carla
Mm-hmm.
2 is better than this, right? Like
Yeah, I'd
it
rather
is.
watch that honestly, because at least I get a break. You know, I'm being an asshole.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but
Yeah, I love it. I
oh
love it.
shit.
I mean, hey, it's warranted. You give shit where it's warranted, and you give credit where it's
Mm-hmm.
warranted, and that's just what it
Right,
is.
right. So you
Uh,
improve too. You
exactly.
know.
But the final matchup of the night, the main event, the seventh fight of the night, we have Rickson Gracie, the rumored to be 400-0, standing at 5'11 and 185 versus Nobuhiko Takada, 6 foot 210. And just to give some perspective, this was like the Hulk Hogan of Japanese pro wrestling. Like this man was
Mm-hmm.
very famous for being a pro wrestler and made a lot of different appearances in Pride. Most of them getting taken out the way he was in this one. This one was fun as well, but it also had its slow moments too. Um, Rickson Gracie, it's hilarious that they were talking about him claiming that he was 400 wins and 0 losses, just because the way he sort of goes about fighting is very weird. Like I feel like that watching him, the mystique of who he is and sort of how great he is in jujitsu, I don't doubt that. I just feel like it doesn't come across as far as his MMA stuff because that was sort of what was propped up. Like this is the guy,
Mm-hmm.
this is the Gracie out of all of them that is actually the best.
Mm-hmm.
And just based off what I saw in this one on the feed, it like his chin was right there to be touched and he's just like doing all this like exactly moving with the energy like back and forth with his hands and just leaving his
Oh
chin out
man.
there. It was
Oh
strange
man.
on the feet
Mm-hmm.
and they were looking at each other for a very long time just are we doing this, is this what we're doing? So I was for a couple minutes there I'm like, man, I can't have like two of these back to back. Like, please, please, I can't have another. Like, I don't know. I didn't know I was in for 30 minutes of the last one. If I'm in for another 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes of this, like,
Uh,
I might never watch Friday. No, let me stop. But the way this one ended up playing out, he eventually was able to get a huge slam, which was
mm-hmm.
awesome, to be honest. Big double leg, where you
Right.
saw that he's not just a grappler, he has that explosion. Because obviously, that was the big knock on a lot of the jujitsu guys early on that, yeah, you're great on the
Mm-hmm.
ground and you're able to finish people because you have superior knowledge to them there, but you can't get them on the ground for nothing. This was a power takedown. So that was cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Holds up, looks good. He almost landed on his neck, so that was rough. But after that, transitioned beautifully to the mount and pounded him with a bunch of shots before swinging to secure that armbar at 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Just honestly, the finish was awesome. Everything leading up to it was questionable, but I came away impressed. I think once he was able to get sort of in range, close that distance, and start working his game, he did a really good job finishing the fight. So I just I can't believe that they sort of propped up these pro wrestling guys as sort of obviously we see what they do in pro wrestling, so it should work here, right? There was obviously moments because he was much bigger that you felt the threat of his striking, but just as far as significant things that landed, there was nothing there really.
Right. Yeah, it was that was actually weird. Like, I think this was like the first full Hickson fight I ever watched. I watched like highlights and stuff, so you only see the good things in highlights, right? So seeing that, I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, you just think, I think the reason why too, with like putting, they were kind of getting known for freak matches, right? I think that's what they started off is with like Takada saying like, the pro wrestler, like, oh, okay, they're probably just drawing in more of the audience, right? But seeing Hickson and like, because I was telling my girl like, oh, this is like this is supposed to be the pinnacle of the Gracie family, and seeing him do like that the slam too was like, I think he mentions in his interviews with Joe Rogan, he talks about how he did wrestle with like some wrestlers before too. Like he tried to make sure like he was good everywhere, his judo and like jujitsu and stuff like that. Um, yeah, the 400 no thing was kind of like suspect to me, but I mean, it's okay. It doesn't matter now. He's retired. He's like doing all his own things and whatnot. Um, but I think, yeah, it definitely would have been a different story if he was the one in the UFC tournament than
Mhm.
Hoist. Uh, I liked it better that Hoist was the one who did it, just because it made jujitsu seem like, oh, this is for a sport where anyone can like beat the bigger guy. And that was like a good case for that. So seeing Hickson just like slam this dude and like fucking go for his arm, I was like, oh, okay. Like I liked seeing how they're favoring more their specialty. Like they're trying to get to their specialty as soon as possible. Like that's what I appreciate about these old fights is I think they're mentioning it on I forgot what it was. I think it was on Twitter. We were talking about how the guy whose specialty is always going to be better than an all rounder. Like you have a guy like Hickson, like if you have just a dude who's like really good at like, he's pretty good at everything, he's never gonna be Hickson in like a BJJ match. Just like the infamous Rogan shop talk where he was trying to say like, oh, I can beat Cain Velasquez in a wrestling match, and he's like, you'd be surprised, and then Rogan's just like, really? Because I think you'd be fucking surprised. Like he'd just fucking kill you. Like it's just like that. Like you see, like who can implement their game, man. I think that was like a lot of the fight going, like a lot of fights going forward. You see that, it's like, oh, who's gonna get to their spot first? And then when you see, because now again, man, like we're so spoiled with that. Because even when you see the difference between like someone who's really their base BJJ, and then they get good at striking, and then you see someone who's good at striking, like their grappling's getting better each day. Like Santos versus Valentina, like perfect example. Like okay, there's like levels to this shit. Like she got backpacked.
A
And
long
so
time, yeah.
yeah, dude. And seeing like these old fights, like you see that, like man, like I don't know, like that's why I was really excited to like do this because it was like, the MMA archive, not the UFC archive, the MMA archive. We're talking about the evolution of martial arts, the evolution of mixed martial arts, and it's these type of events that set the standard, and then going forward pushes the bounds on rules. Like, what are we gonna do here? Like, should we put the time here? Should we make different things? And also going back to like your whole thing about the supplement stuff with chemo, I think they mentioned it in an interview too. Like they were kind of like, yeah, just sign here and like just take whatever you want, but you're not on drugs, right? Like it was like kind of like that,
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And I agree, man. There's a lot of times when I was watching these fights that I'm like, this shit is cool. Like I still enjoy. That's how I know that I'm a fight nerd. Respectfully, because even
Mhm.
in those fights that are slogs, that are taking forever, that are slow, I still, there's still things to be seen. There's still techniques being thrown. There's still things to observe. So I try to always challenge myself in that way to like stay engaged. But if a fight is hard to stay engaged with, I'm gonna make sure to tell you guys because obviously, if I was talking about, imagine me talking about that Dan Severn fight as if it was some poetic masterpiece of the southpaw jab against orthodox fighters. Hell no, that's not happening. Like it didn't play out that way. So that's not how it
Mm,
is. But yeah, there's a lot to
right.
appreciate as far as the evolution of MMA and the way things. There's like a certain standard now. Like
Mhm.
if you're not able to put out ready output in general,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to win MMA fights today. Like there's not
No.
fighters even in the grappling phases now. Obviously the scoring criteria has changed over the years, but if
Mm-hmm.
even if you're grappling and doing well and advancing position, if that's not directly leading to sub attempts that are close or damage on the ground, it does not
Mm-hmm.
count. It does not matter for much. So it's just cool to see the way control and the way control was looked at back then, how it's evolved over time. But this was a fun event, dude. There was a lot of moments where I was like, this shit is crazy. And this leads beautifully into our awards. So every in one of these, excuse me, in every one of these episodes, I give out my own performance bonuses. It's important. I make sure that I make a distinction with mine too. So we have fight of the night, performance of the night. So it could be a knockout or a submission, whatever you feel. Sometimes I've done decisions where I felt like someone was able to show their full game in MMA and
Mm-hmm.
had a standout performance. So that's my idea of performance of the night. And then I have KO of the night and submission of the night. So I'll start us off with my fight of the night. And this wasn't hard for me. It was a couple of ones here where it was hard for me. This wasn't hard for me. It was Gary Goodrich and Oleg Taktarov.
Mm-hmm. Man. Yeah, I think I'd go with that too, honestly. I thought just like the whole excitement of both of them getting knocked down and then just like finally getting that finish, I was like, yep, definitely got to give it to Uncle Gary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That fight was crazy, and you're gonna see a theme now because that fight made up for a lot of the pain of this night. So performance of the night. I'm curious. I'll let you lead with this one. Who do you feel had that performance of the night?
Um, hmm. I think Hickson, just based on like him actually implementing his game plan and like showing more than he can. Yeah, he can wrestle, all that too. So it was
Nice,
awesome.
nice. I respect that. I personally didn't make that choice, but I respect it. Um, I think eh, I agree though. He definitely showed his dominance on the ground, so that was a big part of it, and it was probably the most dominant out of a lot of the fights. So that's a good pick. I went with this fight's going to be getting a couple of awards tonight. Gary Goodrich versus Oleg Taktarov. My reason for picking this one was obviously he was able to stuff the takedowns when they got close,
Right.
and the fact that Oleg Taktarov showed some growth too. He showed that he was working on his striking too early on and
Mm-hmm.
capitalized on those moments. So that was my reason for giving this one performance of the night. Felt like it was a two fighter affair instead of just a drubbing on one side. But
Right.
next up,
Exactly.
KO of the night. there's there's so many options for us to choose
Uh,
from.
yeah. Jan Seven. No. No. Oh, that's you. What are you gonna say? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Gary Goodrich versus Oleg Taktarov.
Man, he
Three in a
going
row,
home.
baby.
He
Three
going
in a
home with all
row.
the bonuses.
Legit.
Oh
All that they're
man.
getting 150K tonight, but like
Mm,
they're good.
I know. He's fine now.
That was the
That's
only
funny.
KO though, right? I'm not going crazy. Everything else was
Yeah,
submission
no,
or
that
decision.
was it. That was it. Yeah. It was a nasty KO nonetheless too. So it's like, oh my god.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So now submission of the nights. I'm excited. I'm gonna make you lead on this one once again. What is your pick for submission of the night?
um. Okay, I don't want to pick Hickson again because he already got the performance bonus. So I think I'll go with Murakami. I think we need to show Murakami more love. I think that judo throw leading into the armbar, I was like, yeah, that was fucking fire. Let's do that shit. Yeah,
Yes,
give him
sir.
something to go home with. Give him something to go home with.
Yes, sir. That's the one I picked too. and
know.
and honestly, you would think it would be Hickson, obviously, just because that's sort of what's expected. But I felt like that
Mm,
was a way more violent finish, like just getting
mhm,
to that spot and then quickly transitioning, because there was some time in between Hickson's big takedown and obviously getting into mount. There's an art to that as well. Don't get me wrong, but just as far as flowing
mhm,
into that, I thought that was awesome. So yeah, that was my pick too.
mhm.
We love it. We love it here. We're giving out the same bonuses. It's all good. It's all good.
Exactly,
That's how you could
exactly.
tell those were the ones that stood out for sure. Um, but this was awesome. Once again, thank you so much for coming on and chatting shit with me. And I'm watching these fights because I know it's a time investment to find the time to
Mm-hmm.
watch these. But I'm excited because we got more to talk about, baby. We had a crazy event last night at UFC 275 in Singapore. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much to talk about, but let's just start with the main event, dude. Please, how did you feel about this one?
Yeah, I don't think Glover should retire. Like I just think I feel like he has like just that performance alone. That was the type of performance you need. Like we've had Jones versus Gustafson one. That was like holy shit, this is the best light heavyweight fight in the history of light heavyweight fights. And then seeing this one, like the amount of drama and excitement, the amount of hope that you get for both guys, like that's the type of shit I like in a fight. Like because everyone, like, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people, they shit on the light heavyweight division, man. Like, it's like, but when you see like those type of performances, that's like, wow, okay, like, damn, this is the shit. Like, this is the shit I like to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but seeing that fight was just super inspiring. Like seeing Yuri blocking punches with his chin, but still getting a submission. Like it with no hooks in, just like on the side. And then like I didn't even see the tap at first because the
Mm.
camera angle was so weird. But then like seeing it again, I was like, wow, he actually did tap.
And it
I
was
was
a
like,
frantic tap too. Like you could
yeah,
tell it was on tight.
like what's yeah, exactly. Like what's his squeeze after like 5 rounds? Like, come on, are you kidding me?
And he did a beautiful job turning into that side too. So even
Mm,
though there was no hooks, there was a lot of body leverage there on the choke too.
exactly. So wild. But yeah, man, that was just beautiful. It was beautiful,
Hell
and
yeah.
it's making me excited for that whole division.
Dude, I tell anyone that will give me the chance. I got my college degree covering Risen, so I've been a fan of Yuri since 2015. Like I love watching this dude fight because a lot of what you see now in the UFC is the same thing. Like he's not a fighter, although he has moments of dominance and moments of brilliance that leads to these finishes. He's not
Hmm.
like the poster boy for dominant MMA fighter. A lot of the times in his fights, he ends up on bottom, getting controlled, getting hammered, and
Hmm.
finding a way to fight through it. And just both of these guys, this is what I was alluding to as far as there's different criteria as far as what makes a fight great. Like this fight was great because it had multiple levels of that. The first being obviously just the technical side of it. It was a big clash of styles. Yuri fights entirely different than anyone, but compared to Glover specifically, very different styles. Glover's very sort of compact, very I would say efficient. Like there's not a lot of wasted movement,
Hmm.
tight strikes, tight takedown attempts, and the clash of styles between Yuri's just open charging style made for an awesome matchup where there was a lot of times of sort of dominance from both guys where one is it feels like they're running away with it and they're like it feels like they're almost seconds away from finishing it at multiple different points, and then the momentum shifts entirely, and the other guy is now on that same brink. It was nuts. I think there must have been at least 7 or 8 moments where the tide shifted like that during this fight that had me losing my damn mind. Like I'm like,
Hmm.
how many more times? Like each time it happened, I'm like, well, they can't keep doing this. Like how many more times can you get away with this shit? Like you can't get taken down again, or else you're not gonna win. Like Yuri, you're losing. That's how I felt watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that he was able to pull the victory out of the jaws of defeat literally in the last 30
Hmm.
seconds, all-time great fight. And there was moments where it was sloppy as hell, like let's be
Hmm.
honest, and that's okay. Like there
Hmm.
will never be a bantamweight fight that technically looks anything like this fight, but that's why I
Hmm.
enjoy the difference in the divisions too. Like if there
Hmm.
was a light heavyweight that fought like bantamweights, he would undoubtedly be the champion. If obviously if he was the same size, like 100%, just based on the way the divisions are, it's more
I know,
high
yeah, the
quality
technique, yeah.
MMA. But
Right, right,
there was
right.
moments of sloppiness in this one, but it was just exciting as hell to watch, dude.
Yeah, dude. You have to have those cracker fights, those like grind pace, like everything like that. Like, because you see them make adjustments too after being fatigued. A lot of people forget that. Like, these guys have been fighting for like 20 minutes straight so far. Like, the fact that they're still with good technique sometimes and having moments where they're still scrambling, still fighting for position, whatever it is. Like, it's amazing. Like, that's why, like, that last second tap, that was like, he could have won if he just stayed on the feet, if he just boxed him up from there. But then he kept shooting for the takedown. I think that was just fatigue, you know, like, because
Mhm.
Glover has good fight IQ. They both have great fight IQ. Like Yuri, like his range and like being able to flow his combos. Like, if he stayed, like I was saying it all leading up to this fight, like if Glover gets top control, he's going to keep him there. If Yuri stays at his range, he's going to piece him up and fuck him up. And like a lot of it was great. Like that whole first round, like again, like watching the old fights, watching the newer fights, like the fact that they were in open stance, Glover's hitting the body kick, like they're both trying to get each other with it. You know, this, yeah, like exactly. Like you see, lower the weight classes, the higher the technique. But like seeing like them just grind and try to like get the finish and get the win, like that's the shit you appreciate from top level MMA. You know,
Hell yeah.
that's it's just so good, man. It's so good.
And the way that they both sort of had to battle through it too. Like they both were cut badly. They both were
Mm-hmm.
hurt at different times. I thought
Mm-hmm.
for sure Yuri was going to get knocked out in that fifth round. Like I thought for
Mm.
sure, just the way I've seen Glover separate people from consciousness, but the way he
Right.
was landing so easily, it felt like every punch he was throwing was landing. Um,
Hard, bro. Hit him
exactly
hard.
hard. And to jump back a couple rounds to what you were saying about Yuri's style, like I love the way he fights when he's on because there's stretches
Mm-hmm.
and combinations where he can't miss. Like every punch he's
Mm-hmm.
throwing from either hand is landing and is landing hard. And it's a weird thing that he does too because like it's almost like the concept of like an up jab but with hooks. Like he comes from
Right.
underneath and throws a hook that's
Like a
ranging up.
shuffle hook. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a
It's weird.
very different way to throw punches, and I'm sure a lot of coaches watch him and cringe and be like, if you want to throw a hook, you don't throw it like that. But it
Mm-hmm.
works for him, and that's what
Right.
makes that's something that I love about MMA too. Like there's no cookie cutter. This is how you fight. This is
Mm-hmm.
what gets you success. Everyone
Right.
can be their own unique individual and express themselves differently. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it makes sense why he's one of my favorite fighters, and Tony Ferguson was one of my favorite fighters because they have a similar style where it's
Right.
crazy. It isn't gonna like they're here for a good time, not a long time. Like this is not a
Mm-hmm.
style that you can have longevity with because you're taking so much damage walking through the fire to get
Mm-hmm.
there. But just crazy that it could end in that way, and the fact that he's the first person to ever submit Glover, um,
Mm-hmm.
and almost getting knocked out minutes before that. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, such a crazy comeback. Like, yeah, man. I just everything about that was just beautiful, and just seeing the evolution of like that. Like, this is perfect for Yuri too, because like this is the type of fight you need. Like, because everyone's like, oh, he's just like a prospect. You just get a hype job, whatever. But like you, I've seen his stuff in like Risen too, and I'm like, holy shit, no, this guy's the real fucking deal, man. Like, that's the type of match you need though. Like for both sides, like you need that type of match to like see where your heart is. You know, see the heart of a champion, see how you're gonna fight in these situations. Like the whole time of the fight, I was like, oh, this is it. But then like later on, I progressed to like, what are you gonna do now? Like, what's your response to this? And then they respond perfectly each time, you know. And then Yuri just right there took the whole match just with that choke. And like, I don't know, like it's just such a good time to like be a fight fan.
Hell
Like
yeah,
honestly,
dude. Hell
it's
yeah.
so
And
good.
boxing too. Like I was talking about that the other day too. Like I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
watch much boxing straight up, but this year I feel like in MMA and boxing has been an awesome year as far as getting the fights that
Mm-hmm.
we want to see.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a lot of like main events that fallen out so far. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's been an awesome start to the year, and this just continues on that trend. This and it wasn't just this fight too. Like I feel like how great this fight is takes away from how great the card was. There was what 7 or 8 finishes on this card devastating finishes too. Most of them knockouts. I don't even think there was a submission besides the main event.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything else was either knockouts or decisions, and there were
Right, right,
two
right.
sort of fight of the night contenders in my opinion. Besides the main event, because obviously that one's
Mm-hmm.
gonna get it. The first was the Sung Woo Choi fight versus Josh Kulabao. That fight was fucking crazy too.
Yeah,
Um,
dude.
the way their styles matched up, I'm a big fan of Kulabao in general.
Mm-hmm.
But the way Sung Woo Choi was able to survive too, getting cracked early
It's
and
fucking
just
wild.
going after it, and there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times where literally they would hit each other, and then it'll be like almost like you see the robot short circuit for a second, like they're like
Oh,
sure, and
dude.
they're like you hit me, and now I need to hit you, and then they just come forward like it like they like it almost gave them life, like they got hit
Yeah,
and was like, all right,
exactly.
well now I gotta come and hit you back. That
Yeah.
was an awesome fight. And then the other one that came to mind was Jake Matthews versus Andre Fiallo. When I was
Oh,
watching that one,
dude.
dude,
Dude.
that fight, dude, this is gonna be a throwback. That fight
Woo!
reminded me of how I felt when I was watching Andre Arlovsky versus Travis Brown live. Like I watched that unfold live. I wasn't
Yeah.
there, but like watching it live from my house, it felt the same way during that fight. Where like during these exchanges, you're like, "Holy fuck! Like how are either of them surviving right now?" Like there was multiple times where I felt like both of them could have got knocked out, and
Mm-hmm.
just the way the sequence with the finish obviously was devastating. I didn't even, based on the way the camera was, I couldn't really see the shot that finished it, but obviously you see the effect it had.
Mm-hmm.
That was an awesome fight too. Crazy.
Dude, it was like, oh man. Jake Matthews was more of a grappler before, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought too. I think I said that. I was kind of drunk last night. So I was like telling my friends, you know that guy? Yeah, that's a fucking grappler. And I walked to get another beer. So he got knocked. Yeah, but shout out Fialo, man, because he fucking went out there and did his thing anyway. But
Mm.
shit. Yeah, but dude, last night's I gotta do an honorable mention, please. Like Jocelyn Edwards, though. Like, we gotta talk about her
Yes,
because
sir.
I feel like she's really coming in on her own now. Because I remember her debut being super like, she looked kind of awkward and like timid a little bit, but you can see like, oh, she got Muay Thai, like she can scrap. But like seeing her with her, the hair, like she looking like she's throwing some new shit. I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. Where are you gonna go with this? So I'm just happy for her. Like that, shout out to her because that just was like it's nice to see that too. Like these people debuting. Like remember, like not too long ago, we saw like Max Holloway, you know, and then now he's like a mega star now, right?
Exactly.
So
Lost to what's his name? Bermudez. What's his first name?
yeah,
Uh
fuck, I just had it in my head.
Dennis
Dennis
Bermudez.
Bermudez. There you go. Dennis
That
Bermudez.
you
Yeah.
see that fight and you're like, yeah, there's no way this guy's probably going to be top 10, right? And then
Right.
cut to the many years later. Dude, I
Just
agree. And
doing
what
well.
bugged me out
Yeah.
about that fight too is it was a weight class up. That was at 145
Mm-hmm.
and she was fighting at 135 prior. She
Mm-hmm.
filled out, honestly. Like she looked big. I wonder if she's going to stay in that weight class. And the
Yeah.
yams was on full effect. I know I wasn't the only one. I know I
Yeah.
wasn't the only one distracted. Let's be real.
That's so funny. Yeah, dude. I
And
saw a picture too. That's so funny.
yeah, you have
Oh
to. It's
man.
only right. It's only right that
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned it. And funny enough, shout out my guy Eric. I know he was on the other side, loving what Ramona Pasquale had to offer in that department as well. So it was an all action affair on many different fronts.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You're not
Dude.
lying.
Oh man, and then Joanna getting finished that way. My heart, dude. Between Tony
Oof.
Ferguson and Joanna this year, I'm just devastated, bro.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's
That
hard
was
being a
rough.
fan.
That was super rough. Yeah,
Hell
man.
yeah.
Yeah, she has nothing to be ashamed about. Like she looked pretty good when the fight was like in her range, and then it's
Mhm.
just shout out to Cejudo because like I feel like like me and my friend were talking about it too. Like he was talking about like I don't know, man. I feel like Whaley's like in her head a lot. Ever since like she's switching camps and all that stuff, and then as soon as she took her down, I was like, I don't know, bro. Like I think she's figured it out. Like now
Mhm.
it's like I think that's what it is too. It's like amount of finding your confidence in there too. And then you wanna like even being off and like being super relaxed. Like you're not. It's not the same when you're in there fighting like every other month. But I really enjoyed it no matter what. Like she still kept trying to like fight and like try to finish, even though she got caught. You know, but I mean, respect to her. Like, congrats on the retirement. Like, I honestly still think she could still like be a threat in that
and
division.
be at the top of it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, but
Even though she was getting out wrestled, that was a close round. Like there was, I would
mm-hmm,
say she landed the cleaner shots of that round.
mm-hmm,
Obviously, Wei Lee's punches move her a lot more, so
mm-hmm.
it's hard to judge those moments. And I'm biased as fuck, so I will point out everything Joanna did well. But yeah, even in those grappling phases, the way that she got those takedowns and the clear strength difference, I
Mm-hmm.
was surprised that Joanna was able to get up twice the way
Yeah.
she did, and sort of reset that position, get back to the feet. It
Mm-hmm.
looked like she was in for a tough round, and she
She
made it
kicked her leg out.
competitive. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome too. Kicked her
Yeah, it
leg
was
out
great.
in a combination. It's just the level of MMA today is awesome. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember a couple years ago, just you couldn't think of the possibility of someone being better than Joanna, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she was tearing through that division, especially
Abusing women.
dude. I
Like,
mean, that stretch, Carla Esparza, Jessica Penne, like murders. Like, oh, please
mm-hmm.
watch that back if you're a newer fan that have
Yeah,
only
dude.
seen Joanna getting cooked lately, and you're like, this girl sucks. Like,
No,
why do they always
no,
give her
it's not,
respect?
bro.
No, that is not the
Yeah,
case
she's
at
so
all.
good.
Hell
She's
yeah.
super good.
What the first woman that I watched throughout the entirety of their career that I was like, they have a different level of edge than their competitors. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not even just about like exactly, it's technical too, but it's not even just about that. It's about like I want to hurt you and I want you to
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm fucking you up right now. Like I want you
Mm-hmm.
to know that it's not just physical. Like I'm
I
better than
know.
you and I'm going to demoralize you through it. Like that's how it
Exactly.
was. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
awesome career for her. It sucks that she has to wrap them up, but I would rather honestly, I would rather it sooner than later. That's why when you mentioned earlier that you don't want Glover to retire, I kind of disagree. Like I'm like this is as good as it gets. Like it is not going to get better than this. It's only going to get worse, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with what you said. Who am I to tell anyone to give up their career? But at the end of the day, I just feel like health wise, like what you gave out in that fight, even though
Takes a lot from you, yeah.
it's literally a victory. Like he was moments away
Mm-hmm.
from winning, even on the cards.
Right,
But it
right,
just
right.
takes away so much, dude. And he's already 42. So
Mm-hmm.
and Joanna's getting out, what is she, 34? So
Yeah.
getting out super early. And in my opinion, that's the way to do it. So proud of her. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope I hope the retirement stays because MMA retirements are known for being a couple months at most.
Exactly. It's wild, man. But yeah,
Dude,
good on her though. Good on her.
275 was awesome, dude. Is there anything else you want to cover before we hop into some quick matchups for the next card?
Um, the Valentina Tyler Santos fight. Who'd you have for that?
Yeah, man. Um, so I was at this point off the devil's lettuce. Let's be clear. I was high as hell at this point. At this point of the night, I was high as hell. So when I was watching live, I thought Santos won the first two rounds, and then I
Yes,
thought
I agreed with that.
Valentina won the last three. That's me personally.
Mm.
But just because I honestly thought Santos would win, because there's this thing that I've noticed, and it's not just in this fight, but when we have a dominant champion, if anyone has any sort of success against them, it's viewed as if they are dominating them. Even though even with the back control, like those were close rounds. Like it wasn't like it was just a like
Yeah, she was
a
rocking her too.
whitewash. Exactly.
Yeah.
Valentino was landing some big shots. So it was a fun fight though, and it was great, obviously, to see her get tested in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and pass those tests as well. It was an awesome fight, dude. I loved it. But I personally had Valentina winning. I thought the right person won.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like I just thought the matchup in itself was exciting. Like, so I was gonna talk to you about this. So you know how calf kicks have been the meta as of late, and then I think they're switching over now. I think the meta for women's MMA is the head and arm throw.
Hell
Like
yeah.
that's been the meta for like years now. So they haven't really changed it up a bit. But seeing Tyler, like that's exactly what you need to do when someone goes for a hit and arm. You have to counterbalance your weight and like go with it, but also like hip heist to where you can take their back too. And she did a lot of good things in that match. And there were times where she didn't look that confident, Tyler, and then Valentina seemed like a little frustrated at some points too.
Mhm.
But that's the type of fight you need to really like improve on for both sides. So
Yep.
yeah, people were like, "Oh, I think it was a robbery." I'm like, I mean, like, I wouldn't be mad at a rematch, but this because that was actually a pretty fun fight to watch.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like, I mean, you gotta. What was it? Split? Was it a split or unanimous?
No, it was unanimous.
Unanimous. Oh,
The
okay.
cards were all over the place, though. That's why it felt like a
Yeah,
robbery to some.
yeah. I
Because
agree
yeah,
with. I didn't.
49-46 or whatever, that's
That was the one.
unjustifiable.
That was weird. That was weird to me. But I did think Valentina took that just because of how it ended too, and like a lot of the moments she had on the feet. But yeah, good fight nonetheless.
Yeah, and it's hard to have a good Valentina Shevchenko fight. I will be honest. So, made for a fun one. Dude, this was awesome. I had a great time doing this. But before we leave, we got some rapid fire. I'm just gonna ask you prediction as fast as you could give it to me and lay out how you think the fight is gonna go. Next week, there's a couple fights on here that I'm actually really looking forward to. Adrian Yanez versus Tony Kelly. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
Tony Kelly. I hope Adrian knocks out the racist guy.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. I don't have to. Oh, what a. Please, can you share the name of our guest that's joining us right now?
This is Pogi Bear Garonk
Wow,
Hendricks. This is
what
my
a legend.
pups.
How old
Okay.
are they?
He is how old are you? Born St. Patrick's Day, only 2 months old. Like
Oh
2 or 3
wow.
months old. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna be big. You can see those paws. They're
Yeah,
they're big for his size for sure.
exactly. Give him the views. Like, let's go, let's go. He
Yes,
deserves it.
sir. Yes, sir. 100%. That was the highlight of the damn episode, dude. Thank you. I needed that. I don't even remember what we were talking about. That takes precedent.
No, we gotta talk about Adriana as being the ally to the
Yes,
people,
the
knocking
ally
out
to the
racists.
people. Yes, knock out the
Yeah,
racists. I don't care what happens, just cook them, please. Honestly, I could
oh
see
man.
I could see moments where Giannis is getting pieced up. I think he's an
Mm,
awesome prospect, but he's also in that sort of hittable camp where you're
right,
you're
right, right.
you're in the fire, so you can get hit. But I agree. I think Giannis takes away that one, and then
Mm-hmm.
these next two right here, I'm pumped for. Um, this may surprise you that this is on the list, but Julian Marquez versus Gregory Rodriguez. Who do you think wins that one?
Is that Cyborg? Cyborg Rodriguez? Or no, RoboCop, right?
Yes, the RoboCop.
Is it
Yes.
RoboCop? Oh my god, dude! What the fuck, man? You're throwing these fucking curveballs. Um, I think Julian. Like, I just think like
Mhm.
every time he gets fucked up, like he gets stronger. Like he has
He's a
like that.
Saiyan, bro. He's a
Yeah,
fucking
exactly,
Saiyan.
exactly, dude. Like he's on the verge of death, and then he just gets better. And I'm like, how? And I don't know. Cuban Missile Crisis. That shit. Oh my god, that shit's funny, right?
Great
Oh
nickname.
man,
Great nickname.
yeah.
Yeah, I love the breakdown. I'm going with Gregory Rodriguez because I'm a big fan of his. I think his improvements on the feet are going to be sort of significant. I think he's going to hurt Julian Marquez at some point on the feet.
Right, 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 right.
But if he can get into the wrestling, it could get fun for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just the scrambles. That's why I'm
Right.
anticipating this fight a lot because there's going to be parity on the feet and there's going to be fun grappling transitions. So that one has me hype. And then the main
Mm-hmm.
event. I'm joking. Calvin Cater versus Josh Emmett. This is a hell of a fight right here.
Oh man.
I'm leaning towards Calvin Cater, just because
Yeah.
of the length, but
Uh-huh.
I could easily see him getting starched by one punch by Emmett. He just has that kind of power.
Yeah, they both. I think Cater has more of like the volume and like the precision, but he also has good power. But I think Josh has like that fucking stomping, that fucking stopping power that like makes you like reevaluate your life. Like, why did I choose this as a career? You
Mm-hmm.
know. But I think ever since the Max fight, I think Cater was like, I'm never letting another grown ass man beat me like that again. And then so the shit he did to Giga was just like, oh man, he's like abusing the fuck out of him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I think he's like on a roll right now. I feel like he needs that type of performance to have like to like um to to do his shit. So
Hmm.
I think this one it's gonna be a good test for both because then
Oh
he
yeah.
we're gonna see how Josh rebounds again, and we're gonna see how Cater like if he's still willing to like you know gun for that title shot. You know.
Hmm. I think it's going to be really interesting if Josh Emmett starts shooting for takedowns early. I think that could be something that's like an underrated part of this matchup because obviously we're just thinking of the power, the way the power matches up on the feet. I think Josh Emmett probably out wrestles him. But how long could he keep that up and how much does he mix that in? I don't know. I don't expect him to do
Mm-hmm.
much of it. But I feel like that's an interesting wrinkle that could sort of tip things more in Josh Emmett's favor,
Right.
especially if things start to go south on the feet. But that's a fun fight, dude. That's a fight
Mm-hmm.
of the year contender. Like you don't have to watch it to know that it's gonna be that kind of a fight. So I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, it's a barn burner for sure. And we're actually gonna see body shots. You know.
Yep, and a bunch of them, and body jabs as well. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Arwin, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I always have so much fun with you here on the show, bro. Especially when we get into the grappling. I love out of nowhere. We're just shooting the shit here, and then you're here pulling up hip heist and just beautiful wrestling terminologies. So thank you for that. Thank you for always having awesome things and insightful things to say. Please, once again, remind the people where they could find your awesome Twitter banter.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at 808 MMA Insight. And then if you like music, follow my crew on SoundCloud for the free. I'll put a link up later on my stuff. But yeah, man, it's always a blast every time I'm on the show. That's why, like, as soon as you posted that about like watching old fights, I'm like, oh, dude, hell yeah, because I love film study. So like, this is what I take it as. Like, I love going through old fights and seeing what's new, what was the meta back then, and what works now, what doesn't work anymore. So yeah, you're definitely helping me become a better like fan and a better like just martial arts in general with just like doing these kind of podcasts and stuff like that.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. It doesn't get better than that, folks. So make sure you tune in every goddamn week. Gonna have a lot more of these coming up and covering old school events, but also looking forward at future events. So make sure you follow everything at the MMA Archive, any podcast platform you use. We're out there. So just make sure to follow us, give us a good rating, as well as make sure you follow the OTS Media platforms. We're on all platforms as OTS Media and then OTS Media Co. on YouTube. Make sure you check us out. We cover every goddamn sport: basketball, football, baseball. We cover everything. There's a lot of something for everyone. We do music stuff. We do stuff about movies as well. Just all the content you need, your one stop shop. So please support us at OTS Media Co. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you can catch me before I get out of here at Negrong MMA on Twitter, as well as Chris Negrong _ on Instagram. Thank you so much for all the support, you guys. And shout out to Dustin Poirier. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.